The dark side of country glory. Country music gave us legends, voices that soothed, lyrics that healed. But behind the fame, some of its brightest stars were slowly unraveling. Addiction crept in silently, stealing joy, wrecking careers, and in some cases, lives. These aren't just cautionary tales, they're heartbreaks written in real life. Today, we revisit 15 country icons whose darkest demons nearly silenced their songs forever. Our 15. Randy Travis, the fall of a country gentleman. There was a time when Randy Travis seemed untouchable. His deep, soulful voice defined an era, an anchor of sincerity in the often flashy world of country music. Albums flew off the shelves, awards piled up, and fans adored him. But behind that warm voice was a man quietly unraveling. His troubles didn't begin with a dramatic outburst or a sudden breakdown. They began with pressure. The industry was ruthless. Fame came fast, and with it, expectations. Too many, too loud. When his marriage to longtime manager Elizabeth Hatcher ended in 2010, something inside Randy broke. Alone and vulnerable, he turned to alcohol. And soon, the headlines followed. The most shocking came in 2012. In Texas, police found him drunk, confused, and completely nude on the side of the road. For fans who knew him as a clean-cut country gentleman, it was incomprehensible. The arrest shattered his public image. He was no longer just the singer of Forever and Ever, Amen. He became a symbol of how far a man could fall. The very next year, in 2013, Randy suffered a devastating stroke that nearly took his life. Doctors doubted he would survive, let alone sing again. He defied them all. Though he never fully regained his voice, he reemerged, not as the flawless icon he once was, but as a symbol of resilience. Randy Travis didn't just survive addiction. He outlived it. Hashnarder 14. Travis Tritt, the quiet storm behind the rebel. Travis Tritt wasn't your average country star. With his long hair, rock-infused sound, and gritty confidence, he redefined what it meant to be a Nashville outsider. Songs like Here's a Quarter, Call Someone Who Cares made him a rebel hero. But even rebels break, and Tritt broke quietly, far from the public eye. At the height of his fame in the 1990s, the fast life came calling. Endless tours. Sleepless nights. A constant need to perform and please. Like many before him, he found escape in alcohol and drugs. It wasn't wild or loud. It was gradual, a creeping dependency that twisted into routine. What began as a way to wind down became the thing that slowed him down. On stage, fans noticed the difference. Missed notes, slurred words, fading energy. Behind the curtain, relationships suffered. Bandmates, loved ones, industry allies began to lose faith. He wasn't crashing and burning in public, but the decline was undeniable. Promoters hesitated. Critics whispered. Some doors closed. But Travis didn't let that be his final act. With time, he pulled back from the spiral, distanced himself from the chaos, and recommitted to what had saved him once before. The music. In choosing sobriety, he reclaimed not only his voice, but his place among the legends. 13. Tammy Wynette. Pain behind the voice of devotion. To the world, Tammy Wynette was the first lady of country music, the powerful voice behind Stand By Your Man. But behind the rhinestones and ovations was a woman grappling with relentless pain, both physical and emotional. Tammy's descent didn't start in the honky-tonks or with backstage parties. It started in hospital rooms. From the earliest years of her career, she suffered from mysterious, chronic pain. Surgeries followed, dozens of them. Doctors prescribed painkillers, and at first, they worked. But soon, the pills weren't just about managing pain. They became a lifeline to keep going. Tour after tour, Tammy turned to medication to stand tall before fans. But backstage, her body began to weaken. Her voice trembled. Her eyes lost their sparkle. Rumors spread about her frail appearance. Whispers turned into headlines. Her addiction wasn't scandalous. It was heartbreaking. Her personal life didn't help. Marriages came and went, most famously her turbulent union with George Jones, who battled his own demons with alcohol. Their love was magnetic but toxic, two broken hearts trying to hold each other up. By the time she passed in 1998, her body was worn down by years of dependency. But Tammy Wynette wasn't just another cautionary tale. She was a woman who sang through pain, who gave everything she had to her music until there was nothing left to give. 12. Hank Williams Jr., a son's battle with a legacy and himself. Born into country music royalty, Hank Williams Jr. was never just another artist. He was the heir to a legend. The weight of his father's name was both a blessing and a brutal burden. Everyone expected him to be Hank Sr. reborn. But Hank Jr. didn't want to be a copy. He wanted to be something louder, harder, and wholly his own. As a young man, he rebelled against the clean-cut image forced upon him, diving into a rowdy lifestyle of excess. Alcohol flowed freely, drugs became familiar, and with every step he moved further from his father's shadow, only to be chased by his father's same demons. Then came the fall, literally. In 1975, while climbing Ajax Peak in Montana, Hank Jr. plummeted nearly 500 feet. The accident shattered his skull and face, requiring countless reconstructive surgeries. The pain was unbearable, the recovery slow. To survive it, he turned to painkillers, and soon, dependency took root. What began as medical necessity spiraled into addiction. His erratic behavior made headlines, his drinking worsened, his personal life crumbled. And yet, fans still loved the fire in his voice, the rebel spirit that refused to be tamed. Despite the chaos, Hank Jr. didn't vanish. He clawed his way back, refusing to let addiction define his legacy. He became more than a name. He became his own man, scars and all. 11. Glen Campbell, a gentle voice, lost in the storm. Glen Campbell was the golden boy of country pop crossover. With hits like Rhinestone Cowboy and Wichita Lineman, he charmed the world with a velvety voice and an easy smile. But behind the gleam of success lay a man fraying at the seams, lost in a haze of fame, pressure, and addiction. In the whirlwind of the 1970s, Glen was everywhere, touring, recording, hosting his own television show. But the demands were merciless. He turned to alcohol and cocaine not for pleasure, but survival. They numbed the exhaustion. They kept him moving. But they also started to eat away at everything he'd built. Fans noticed the changes. Sloppy performances, canceled shows, an edge in his voice that hadn't been there before. His chaotic relationship with fellow singer Tanya Tucker was splashed across tabloids, fueled by jealousy, passion, and drugs. The Golden Boy's shine was beginning to fade. The fall came hard. In the early 2000s, Glen was arrested for drunk driving and assault, another beloved legend becoming a cautionary tale. But Campbell wasn't done. He sought help. He sobered up. And even as Alzheimer's disease crept in during his later years, he chose to face it publicly, bravely, with music. His final performances, though fragile, were a testament to his strength. Glen Campbell didn't just survive addiction. He stared down memory loss with grace and left the stage with dignity. Number 10. Willie Nelson, the rebel who outran the flames. Willie Nelson has always danced to his own rhythm. With his braided hair, weathered guitar, and unmistakable voice, he became the soul of outlaw country. But behind the legend lies a man whose life was anything but peaceful, a man whose flirtation with addiction and rebellion nearly consumed him. Unlike many others on this list, Willie's struggles weren't hidden. He didn't spiral in silence. He embraced marijuana publicly and unapologetically, making it part of his identity. But while cannabis made headlines, it was his battles with deeper legal and financial troubles that revealed the true strain of his lifestyle. In the 90s, Willie's world came crashing down, not from drugs, but from debt. The IRS seized his assets, including his beloved ranch, over millions in unpaid taxes. It was a fall that would have destroyed most artists. But not Willie. He responded the only way he knew how, with music. He released the album The IRS Tapes Who'll Buy My Memories to help pay off his debt, and fans rallied behind him. He never ran from trouble. He faced it head-on with humor, resilience, and honesty. Despite arrests, setbacks, and the weight of age, Willie never let the darkness catch him. He turned rebellion into redemption, proving that even outlaws can grow old with grace. 9. Billy Joe Shaver, the outlaw who lived on the edge. Billy Joe Shaver wasn't polished. He wasn't pretty, but his words cut like a knife, and his gravelly voice gave outlaw country its rawest edge. Behind every lyric was a life lived recklessly, fueled by pain, addiction, and the kind of chaos that made him unforgettable. Raised in a rough Texas upbringing, Shaver learned early how to fight, drink, and survive. As his music career took off in the 1970s, the wild lifestyle of the outlaw scene fit him like a glove. Booze and drugs weren't accessories. They were companions. They numbed the trauma. They fueled the songwriting. But they also tore holes in everything he loved. He missed shows, showed up in no condition to perform, burned bridges. His marriages collapsed. His health suffered. And yet he kept going, stumbling but singing. Then came 2007. Outside a bar in Texas, Shaver shot a man in what he claimed was self-defense. The headlines exploded, the courtroom followed. And once again, Billy Joe Shaver was living proof that some flames don't burn out, they explode. Still, the music never stopped. Even in his later years, worn and weathered, he kept writing, performing, and speaking truth. His voice may have cracked, but it never wavered. For Billy Joe, the outlaw life wasn't a costume. It was survival. Part 8. Merle Haggard. From prison blues to redemption songs. Merle Haggard's voice echoed with grit, sorrow, and hard-won wisdom. His music wasn't crafted in luxury. It was forged behind bars, in the dirt of Bakersfield, and in the dark corners of addiction and regret. Haggard didn't just sing about the working man's pain. He lived it. His childhood was marked by loss. His father died young, and Merle spiraled, petty crimes, brawls, and boxcars. Eventually, a botched robbery landed him in San Quentin State Prison at just 20 years old. It was there, inside those cold walls, that he witnessed Johnny Cash perform, a moment that changed him forever. After his release, Haggard poured his pain into music. Songs like Mama Tried and Sing Me Back Home weren't stories. They were confessions. But as fame found him, so did temptation. Alcohol became a crutch. Drugs, a means to keep going. The cycle of addiction haunted him for years. There were moments when it seemed like the bottle would win. But Merle fought back. Not with perfection, but with honesty. His lyrics never painted himself as a saint. They told the story of a man learning, failing, and trying again. By the time he passed in 2016, Haggard had become something rare, an outlaw who outlived his demons. His legacy wasn't just music, it was proof that redemption is always within reach. Number 7. George Jones, the voice that nearly drank itself silent. George Jones had a voice that could break your heart with a single note, haunting, soulful, utterly unmatched. But behind that voice was a man spiraling out of control, caught in the grips of an addiction so deep it nearly silenced one of country music's greatest gifts. Early in his career, Jones was a dedicated artist, driven, disciplined, deeply talented. But success brought pressure, and pressure brought the bottle. What started as a way to unwind became an all-consuming force. His drinking wasn't a secret, it was a disaster in plain view. He became infamous as No-Show Jones, missing performances without warning, leaving fans disappointed and venues empty. One moment he was charming the stage, the next he was drunk, unpredictable, and unreachable. The most iconic moment of his downfall? Driving a riding lawnmower to buy liquor after his wife hid the car keys. It was absurd. It was tragic. And it was George. His marriage to Tammy Wynette collapsed. His health faltered. His reputation withered. And yet, he still had that voice. Even when drunk, even when broken, it pierced through the fog. In time, with relentless effort and the help of those who never gave up on him, George got sober. He rebuilt what he'd nearly lost. And when he died in 2013, he wasn't remembered as a failure, but as a survivor, a man who clawed his way back and sang like no one else ever could. 6. Steve Earle, a genius lost and found in the wreckage. Steve Earle was never meant to play it safe. With a gravel-soaked voice and razor-sharp lyrics, he brought a raw honesty to country and folk that few dared to touch. But that same fearlessness led him into dangerous territory, down a path of heroin, crack, and nearly complete destruction. In the 1980s, Earle's talent was undeniable. His debut album stunned the industry. Smart, rebellious, poetic. But behind the brilliance, darkness was brewing. Success became overwhelming. The lifestyle, chaotic tours, endless nights became his excuse. What began as casual experimentation spiraled into dependence. By the early 90s, Steve was almost unrecognizable. Missed gigs, burned bridges, and erratic behavior became routine. The industry that once celebrated him now whispered doubts. Friends walked away. His voice dimmed under the weight of addiction. Then came the fall. Arrest after arrest, and finally, jail time. For many, that would have been the end. But not Steve. In prison, he faced his demons with brutal honesty. Rehab followed. Slowly, painfully, he crawled back. When he returned to music, it was with fire in his soul. His voice was older, rougher, but truer. Songs like Transcendental Blues and Jerusalem weren't just music. They were confessions, scars turned into sound. Steve Earle's story isn't about addiction. It's about resurrection, the kind that only comes after losing everything and daring to rebuild. Top 5. Allan Coe, the wild one who couldn't be tamed. David Allan Coe didn't care about rules. With a growl in his voice and fire in his lyrics, he carved his own place in country music. Bold, outrageous, and unapologetically rebellious. But behind the bravado was a man constantly on the edge, gripped by addiction, legal troubles, and inner chaos. Before the spotlight ever found him, Coe had already lived a dozen lives. Prison stints, biker gangs, a childhood soaked in instability. When fame came, it didn't soften him. It fed the storm. Drugs and alcohol weren't weekend vices. They were constant companions. On stage, he was electric. Off stage, he was volatile. His behavior grew erratic. His relationships strained. Promoters hesitated. Labels backed off. He was too risky, too wild, too unpredictable to handle. The music, though, was never in question. Songs like You Never Even Called Me By My Name showcased his unmatched storytelling. But the headlines kept coming. Bar fights, arrests, deaths. His outlaw image became a burden he could no longer carry. Despite it all, Coe refused to vanish. His fan base remained fiercely loyal. They didn't want perfect. They wanted real. And no one was more real or more raw than David Allan Coe. He didn't conquer his demons. He coexisted with them. And in that brutal honesty, he became a symbol of rebellion that still echoes through country music's underbelly. Before, Waylon Jennings, the king of outlaw country, and his $1,500 a day habit. Waylon Jennings was more than a country star. He was a movement. With that deep baritone and hard-edged swagger, he led the outlaw country revolution, rejecting Nashville's polish for something raw and real. But behind the legend was a man sinking deeper into addiction, one line at a time. By the mid-1970s, Jennings had it all: fame, fortune, creative freedom. But it came at a price. To keep up with the pressure, the pace, and the party, he turned to cocaine. And not just casually. At one point, Waylon admitted to spending $1,500 a day on his habit. It wasn't just a drug, it was a chain around his soul. The toll was enormous. He lost weight, his heart raced out of control, his mind clouded. The music kept coming, but the man behind it was unraveling. Recording sessions turned into chaotic marathons. Friends grew worried. Even the law came knocking. In 1977, he was arrested for drug possession, a moment that forced him to face just how far gone he was. Still, Waylon didn't change overnight. Recovery was a war, not a moment. But eventually, he made the choice to fight. He quit cold turkey, determined not to let the drugs define his story. And they didn't. Jennings spent his later years sober, reflective, and still making music that mattered. His voice remained a beacon, not of perfection, but of survival. He had walked through fire and somehow came out still singing. 3. Keith Whitley, a voice that was gone too soon. Keith Whitley wasn't just talented, he was transcendent. His voice, drenched in sorrow and sincerity, could silence a room. With hits like Don't Close Your Eyes, he seemed destined to be the next great pillar of country music. But behind that rising star was a man crumbling under the weight of alcohol and inner torment. Raised in Kentucky, Whitley grew up surrounded by bluegrass and bottle culture. Drinking wasn't taboo, it was tradition. As he climbed the ladder of fame, the habit followed. Slowly, steadily, alcohol took over his life. And no one, not fans, not industry insiders, realized how close he was to the edge. He tried to keep it together. He toured, he recorded. He even married fellow country artist Lori Morgan, who stood by him through storm after storm. But the bottle kept calling. He missed shows, showed up too drunk to perform. Friends begged him to stop. He promised he would. But addiction doesn't let go easily. On May 9, 1989, at just 34 years old, Keith Whitley was found dead in his home, his body poisoned by alcohol. The news shocked the music world. One of the purest voices of a generation was silenced, not by age or illness, but by a disease he couldn't outrun. Whitley left behind more than heartbreak. He left a legacy, a reminder of how fragile greatness can be and how addiction doesn't care how talented you are. 2. Hank Williams Sr., the legend who burned too bright. Hank Williams Sr. wasn't just a country icon. He was country music incarnate. With haunting lyrics like, "I'm so lonesome I could cry" and "Your cheatin' heart," he shaped the very soul of the genre. But behind the poetic genius was a man battling unbearable demons. Physical pain, emotional wounds, and an addiction that would cut his life tragically short. By the time he reached his mid-20s, Hank was already a legend. But the fame didn't ease his suffering. Born with spina bifida occulta, he endured chronic pain for most of his life. To manage it, he turned to alcohol and morphine, first for relief, then for escape. As his dependency grew, so did his instability. He missed shows, arrived intoxicated. His performances, once magnetic, became erratic. Promoters stopped booking him. The Grand Ole Opry let him go. His personal life collapsed. Marriages failed. Friendships vanished. The man who once captivated the world was now stumbling through it, lost. On New Year's Day, 1953, at just 29 years old, Hank Williams Sr. died in the back seat of a car on his way to a concert. The cause? Heart failure, worsened by years of substance abuse. He left behind a son, a broken nation of fans, and a catalog of songs that still echo with ache and truth. Hank Sr. didn't just die young, he died exhausted. His light burned too hot, too fast, and changed country music forever. Number 1. Johnny Paycheck, the rebel who shot first and sang later. Johnny Paycheck was country music's middle finger to conformity. His anthem, "Take This Job and Shove It," didn't just speak for the working class. It roared for every fed-up soul in America. But while his songs championed rebellion, his real life spiraled into something darker, fueled by addiction, violence, and self-destruction. From the start, Paycheck was volatile, a brilliant songwriter with a chip on his shoulder and a drink in his hand. Success found him, but stability never did. Drugs and alcohol became his constant. His reputation for trouble was legendary. He fought with bandmates, missed shows. His erratic behavior scared off promoters and strained every professional relationship he had. Then came the moment that would haunt his legacy forever. In 1985, during a heated bar altercation, Paycheck pulled a gun and shot a man in the head. Miraculously, the victim survived, but the damage was done. Paycheck was arrested and eventually sentenced to prison. It was the crash everyone saw coming, but no one could stop. Behind bars, something shifted. Stripped of the stage, the spotlight, and the bottle, he finally confronted the wreckage. He got clean. He sought redemption. And when he was released, he returned to music, humbled, quieter, but still burning with the fire of a man who had walked through hell. Johnny Paycheck didn't rewrite his story with a comeback. He ended it with a warning. Rebellion without control becomes ruin. And sometimes the price of pain is paid in silence, long after the last song fades.